Alright guys, today we're back out here working on this 84 944. Alright, so today James is going to be working on this battery tray. It doesn't look to be in bad shape. That's because someone has put some fiberglass down in here and you can see it's rusting underneath it. So we're just going to cut all this out and replace it with a good battery tray. Alright, so here's the good battery tray that we're going to be installing here. You can see it's in much better shape, and it's actually a shame to have to cut this car out because I think it's in better shape than a lot of cars that we actually put back together. Alright, so James is pulling this back and we're finding just tons of rust up underneath here. It seems to expand way down into the fender well here. So down from this, I just noticed that this whole area here is crunched in. I'm not sure exactly how that would have happened. Maybe a piece of wood or something got in behind the wheel, crunched it in like that, but that's not a good sign. We have to check this for rust, but there's not really a good way for us to try and pull this out here unless the owner wants us to cut all this out. Take good care of your battery trays. Yeah, you have to peel all that fiberglass up. Alright, James has the battery tray out now.
It's not in there like I want to. I'm gonna have to trim.
James test fitting the panel. Alright, James has everything cut out now. Alright, so James is slowly getting there. You can see that he has it cut out now, and the only thing he needs to do is trim a little bit more so that way it fits perfectly, and then start welding it in. Alright, so James has the new battery tray welded in. I'm going to go ahead and shoot some primer on this to keep it from rusting, and once we put the coating down you shouldn't see any of these beads. But here's what we started with. You can see here that it's all rusted out. Someone had put some fiberglass down on this and it just made it worse because it was just holding in moisture. But here we had a big hole that was just leaking water into the interior, but that's all fixed up now. Alright, that's one rust-free battery tray installed. Alright, so I've got the battery tray coated now, and once this dries then I'll put another coat of primer on here and then we'll paint it the color of the body, and hopefully you'll never be able to tell that it was repaired. As for now, I'm going to get started on some of this body work. As I mentioned, there's a dent here that I'm going to have to remove. There's also some dings up here. Once I get those out, this car is fairly straight, and so hopefully it won't take too much time to get this all sanded down and make it look nice. Alright, another thing I'm going to be doing is swapping out this 924 fuel door. As you can see, it's flat and doesn't curve out like the 944 fuel door does. And I've actually got a spare 944 fuel door here that I'll be using. And when I put them side by side, hopefully you can see the difference between them. Alright, I've got the 944 fuel door on now, and as you can see it looks much better without that gap there. And so I'll probably have to remove this again for paint, but as for now I just wanted to get the other one removed. Alright, I've got this car mostly sanded down now, and I've been working on some of these trouble spots. You can see that I've got a skim coat of bondo on here, but I need to do a few more. I also need to pull this area out here. I don't know if you can see it on film, it's hard to see, but it's been dented in right here. So today I'm going to be pulling this out, trying to get some of the shape back into this panel here, and also work on this. Going forward here, you can see that the door is pretty straight, so is the fender. Up here on the hood, you can see that there's some bondo from a previous paint job, and it has some cracks in it. So I'm gonna have to sand all that back, and I'm gonna use some fiberglass filler instead of bondo there to make sure that it doesn't crack again. And over here we have this fender finished up, and this door. There is a ding here that I'll have to take out, but the rest of the car looks pretty good. And once I get all the dings and dents out of it, I just need to do a quick 400 grit and it'll be ready for paint. Alright, I tapped this a few times with my body hammer and it looks so much better now. So I'm going to go ahead and sand this and see what we've got. Alright, I've got it all sanded down now and it looks pretty good. I may need to put a skim coat of Bondo over this just to make sure that there aren't any warps, but so far everything looks good. Alright guys, I just picked these parts up from the plater, so let's start putting these engines back together. Alright guys, now that I got the parts back from the plater, I'm getting ready to put this red 944's engine on the stand. Alright, I've got the engine on the stand now, and you can see all my plated parts in those buckets there. But before I put this back together, I need to hone these cylinders. Of course, number 2 here was scored and we had it sleeved, so it's already been honed at the machine shop, but the rest of these are still the original Lucille, so I'll be honing those with this Sun AN30 silicone compound and some felt honing pads. Alright, I went through and sorted some of these parts so it'll be easier to find everything. Alright, I've got all the cylinders honed now, and you can see that the Lucille cylinders have a dull finish, while number 2 here looks rather shiny since it has the steel sleeve. And once you have everything honed with the AN30 paste, you're going to wipe down the cylinders until they're completely clean to remove any residue. Now I'm ready to fit the rings. Alright, so here are the pistons. Next I'm going to go ahead and gap the rings. Alright, I've got the second set of rings gapped now. Alright, I have the rings on now, and next I'm going to install the pistons. Alright, I've got the pistons installed now, so next I'll install the crank. I'm going to be using all new bearings, and I'm just going to sort of skip through this because I've got to get this engine finished up, but I will be building another one and I plan to take my time and show you guys exactly how it's done. Alright, so I'm installing the main bearings and I thought I'd give you a few tips right quick. As you can see, I have some tape on each one of these connecting rods, and what that does is prevent me from scoring the cylinders as I'm installing the pistons, so just something to keep in mind. Also, when installing the main bearings, they do go on a certain way. You want to make sure that the groove side is on the block and this side goes on the girdle here. Also, when lubing everything up, you want to make sure that you get plenty of lube here on each side of the thrust bearing, both halves. And when installing this here, you want to make sure that it lines up with that there, or you will crush it. So just something to watch out for. Once I get all this ready to go on, I'm going to take and run a bead of Loctite 574 along there, and that's going to make sure that this is sealed tight. Alright, I have the crank installed now and I've checked all the clearances and it moves very easily. So next I'll go ahead and install the connecting rods. Alright, I now have the connecting rods on with new bearings, so next I'll install the oil pump. Oil pump's on, next I'll install the water pump. Alright, so here's the head that I had rebuilt at the machine shop. I'm going to go ahead and get it on. Now that the head's installed, I'll go ahead and install the oil cooler. Alright, now that I have the oil cooler installed, I'm going to be installing the balance shafts. You can see I have everything laid out here to be installed, including some new bearings. Upper balance shaft cover is on and torqued down. I also have a new bearing pressed into the cap here. Next, I'll install the front main seal and the new oil pump sleeve. Alright, next I'll install the lower balance shaft. Alright, I have the bottom end assembled now and everything is torqued down. I also have the pickup tube installed, so I'm ready to put the oil pan on now. I am going to be replacing the oil pan that came on this car since it looks like someone knocked a hole in it and patched it with JB Weld. But the oil pan that I have is the exact same part number, and you want to make sure that you always match them up correctly, because these pickup tubes, depending on the year, are different lengths, and if you use a different oil pan from, say, an earlier car, it may not be as deep, and as you torque it down, it could actually crash into this and break your pickup tube. So it's something to keep in mind. Another thing that I like to do is, you can see here, this is the gasket for the oil pan, and I have all the bolts in it, and this is just stretching it out a little bit, and I let it sit like this for a few hours, because as you install this, you'll find that this gasket needs to be stretched out a little bit. But if you do this beforehand, it'll be a lot easier to install the oil pan. So here's the oil pan that came off this engine. As you can see, someone has put a lot of JB Weld on here. So I've just decided to replace this oil pan altogether. So here's the replacement oil pan. Alright, the oil pan is on now. So next I'll install the spark plugs, and this engine will be just about ready to put back in. Alright, the new spark plugs are installed, and next I'm going to put these boots on just to keep dirt out of there. So here's the engine before, and this is how it looks now. Alright, next I need to clean this engine bay up before I put the engine back in, so I'm going to start by power washing everything, and I'll paint where necessary. Alright, I've got most of the engine bay painted now, and everything is looking much better. I still need to paint the brake booster and touch up some areas here, but next time I hope to have that done and we'll get the engine back in. Alright guys, we got this car sanded down now and the engine's almost ready to go back in, so that's where we'll pick up next time. So that's just about going to do it for this video. If you'd like to stay up to date with some of the projects we're working on around the shop, come join us on Facebook. I'll leave a link in the description below. I'd also like to thank everyone who supports this channel on Patreon, since these videos would not be possible without you. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.